Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Akil, and for today's episode we cover habits and how to get better at them, as well as decentralization. What value will it add and how do we get there? Joining me today is my friend and colleague Merlijn Boogerd, who's a software consultant over here at Xebia. I'll put all of his socials in the description below, and with that being said, enjoy the episode.
Beyond coding.
Like a green screen sounds like a reasonable idea, but I also wonder at the same time, how long is it going to be until the software is just capable of not needing a green screen at all anymore?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you have the functionality to add a background, right? It's not that far off, it seems like, if you compare those two.
It's just a little bit
Yeah.
too slow to really catch up with cutting you out properly.
Yeah, especially for girls, because all the hair just fades out and they look kind of weirdish head-wise. Yeah, but what's that about a podcast? Your girlfriend wants to do one?
Yeah, so she does yoga, a lot of different styles of yoga, and she has gone really in depth. She's only recently started, like a few years back.
Okay.
But she went from absolutely doing no movement at all to being complete yoga fanatic.
Oh, nice.
And when she goes for it, she goes all out. And so she's been reading like a maniac. Our house is filled with yoga books. So she now can also tell a lot. I mean, she has also a lot of background, and she's a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
And a creative therapist. So she has a lot of background that she can combine with all of that. So she has lots of interesting things to tell. So I told her you should do a podcast.
Yeah.
That worked well.
Nice. I thought it was going to be the YouTube, but...
She also will probably do that.
Yeah?
To do actual educational videos.
Yeah. Good stuff. Are you going to come on as a guest? Are you a yoga guy as well?
I do yoga with her.
Yeah?
I wouldn't say that I'm a yoga guy. I'm not nearly flexible enough to be able to call myself that.
Yeah, good stuff. I went to one of your XKEs. I think it must have been like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years back. And you read this book, and it was about starting to do something. And you told the story about, I'm a software engineer, but my skills of typing are not exactly where I want it to be, as well as you did something about fitness and all that other stuff. Are you still doing that?
I still do that, yeah.
What was it, like 100-day plan?
It's the 100-day journal.
Okay.
And I would definitely recommend that to anybody. Just even if you do it only once, I think it's a really good habit to maintain.
Yeah.
The book self-describes as like being the one habit that you should maintain. And I kind of agree with that. So its argument is that like 80% of your time in your life is habitual.
Okay.
So spending time on optimizing your habits pays off really well.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a pretty sound argument, I think.
Sounds solid.
I never really thought of it that way. And it essentially says like, it's a kind of bootstrapping way of maintaining good habits.
Okay.
Because you have these 4 steps that you do every day. Like, so every morning you focus on a number of positive assertions.
Yeah.
It can be about your environment, can be about yourself. So that makes you just start with a positive mood in the day.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's things just to reassert that life is good. And sometimes it's just to say something positive about yourself, just to pump yourself up. It's like, yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
Can be simple like that. And then you maintain 3 goals. That's the second step for the morning. So you write down like, what would make this day a success, whatever your criterion of success may be.
Yeah.
And that makes just at the end of the day that you can look back like at least those 3 things were done. So my day is good.
A success.
Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you reflect also on that. So you have what were the 3 things that I really enjoyed today? And second, what are the things that I learned? To just make sure that you go to bed with a feeling of happiness and of satisfaction. And therefore you get better sleep.
Yeah.
And you also have a moment to reflect on what you learned. So you rehearse also the most important things.
Interesting.
So that's a really good habit because it also allows you to pick up. It's like I want to work towards developing the habit of doing more sports or eating better. The fact that you do this and monitor yourself all of the time makes that you can do that better than I could before.
Yeah.
So now I eat better, I sports better, I sport. How do you say that? I do more sports. And I've picked up things, simple things like doing a typing course and finishing that, and now I can actually type properly.
It probably wasn't that bad in the.
It wasn't great.
Oh really?
Like I think I typed with 6 fingers most of all, but mostly the inner 2.
Yeah.
And then I was reasonably okay, but I made a lot of errors. I make significantly less errors, and that really makes a difference in like how you think, because you're more busy correcting your errors than actually producing stuff.
Yeah.
It's a context switch every time. So
yeah, I really like that because, first of all, I think it contributes to happiness. I'm glad you said that. And I think happiness is a skill that you can and should get better at, right? Being or having that positive mindset, or just saying, man, may today be a happy day. Or actually, I'm feeling quite good. I'm feeling quite happy. These are my challenges for the day. And then reflecting on and seeing how they went. You wouldn't do that in a normal routine. You just go about your day. Everything is quite fast, at least for me. It's because I'm last minute with a lot of things. I was last minute here. I'm last minute for the train. Everything is go, go, go. I live in Amsterdam. It's also the kind of vibe that fits there.
That's what you get there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I need a lot of conversations with different people to help me reflect. That's usually what helps me reflect in the first place. I don't have a moment where I sit down and even, I mean, it kind of sounds like journaling.
It is journaling.
Yeah, seeing how my day went. I don't do that. I think I should, yet. So what really holds me back is my handwriting is horrible.
Oh,
so that I don't like writing stuff down.
Well, I'm no longer buying the 100-day journals where you actually write.
Yeah.
I do it now on the laptop.
Yeah.
I just have a kind of template that I made that I just duplicate every day in my notes. It's a super simple setup, but it works for me.
Yeah.
And then I can type. And indeed, my handwriting is similarly terrible. So this works.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should definitely do it.
Yeah, you think
Let's do
so?
it.
I'll try it out, man. I mean, I went to the XKE, and for those of you that don't know what an XKE is, it's like Xebia Knowledge Exchange, where Merlijn gave a session on this thing, and it was very inspirational. I didn't say that back then because I don't know how long ago it was, but I knew you less great, so maybe I should have just given you that feedback. But it was very inspirational. Of first of all, the things that you did and the things that you kind of challenged yourself with. You were like, okay, these are the things I started out. And I think if I remember correctly, you didn't end up finishing all of them because you were like, I figured out that was actually quite a lot of things to do. So then I focused on these things.
Yeah, you modify your goals along the way as well.
Yeah.
Like first you set yourself a goal and then you find out along the way that perhaps that's not the best way of phrasing that goal.
Yeah.
And that's not really what I want. So that's also a discovery process, reprioritizing along the way. And that's a good step also in the journal is like every 10 days you reflect on how are you progressing towards your goals? What can you change? So this is, I mean, in Agile, we are very familiar with this kind of process.
Yeah.
But here you do it for your life, and it makes sense that you would do this.
It's weird that it makes sense, right? Because to
Yeah.
me, it also makes sense. But then I haven't actually gotten to the step where I started this thing.
Yeah.
Are you the same? Like, do you procrastinate, or did you pick this up and you were like, immediately, I'm going to start with this?
Of course, I procrastinate.
Love that.
Of course, but I've gotten better.
Yeah.
Because of this, I've gotten definitely better. I actually had a discussion with Martijn a little bit back, and he said also like, if you can do something in 2 minutes, then just do it immediately.
Yeah.
That's also the kind of rule that I stick to. I just get rid of all of those small items because otherwise they stick in your head and they just poison your mind. And you can't. I find that it disables me. I have a lot of things in my head, even if they're small.
Yeah.
I just can't do anything anymore. So I just try to get rid of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you will never be perfect even if you journal, then you will still procrastinate and be lazy sometimes.
Yeah.
That's also healthy.
Yeah, I think so. But I like the idea of getting better at getting stuff done, right? Getting better at being effective, whether it's a new thing that you want to do, a new habit you want to pick up, or an existing one you want to be even better at. I think for myself, I don't do that often enough. The one thing I keep getting better at is hopefully podcasting, even though I don't get...
So far, so good?
So far, so good, right? Yeah, exactly. Because it is the one thing throughout probably the last year and a half that I've done consistently, week over week. That plus like creating YouTube. I have like a YouTube side channel thing I do, which means my video editing has gotten a bit better. But that wasn't like a conscious decision. When I said, I want to do a podcast, I didn't really think about, okay, what is this going to look like in 2 years? So it kind of came through work. It wasn't really that much of a conscious thing. And the only other thing I try to get better at is sports, just because I think healthy body, healthy mind, it helps me throughout the day, which is why I focus on that consistently. I'm not saying I do it every morning. I try to, and I'm not that harsh on myself when it doesn't work.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Don't blame yourself. That helps nobody. But I think it's really good that you are able to maintain this pattern. And I mean, making sure that you have a backlog, you're well prepared, because now you can go to New York without any interruption in your schedule. I think that's impressive.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
That's the idea. I mean, I wanna, since everyone can work remote, right? I wanna work remote. I've done that. I went to Barcelona for a month in April, but to do that, I need to do a lot of things and set everything up, right? I cancel my lease on my apartment. I'm basically homeless. Then I go to a different country, go to an Airbnb, stay there for a month. We're thinking about South Africa for 2 months. And then I have to get back, and I don't have an apartment, so I need to scramble and get one. And in Amsterdam, it's not easy to do so. But since everything is remote, I'm like, it's now or never, right? And I'm in a position where I don't own a house. I have a lease which I can cancel. I don't have a lot of responsibilities yet. No kid.
No kid, yeah.
No kid. That's the biggest one.
That makes a big change.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really trying to make use of this kind of remote environment that we're trending towards.
I would do the exact same in your position.
Yeah.
I would probably travel the world and settle at several places for like 2-3 months and explore what's living like there.
Yeah.
While simultaneously working. It sounds like a dream.
Yeah. Barcelona was awesome. It just went by way too quickly, because in the first week you're like, okay, how do we live here? What are the supermarkets? Supermarkets are not open on Sunday. Oh, that's a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we were out of food.
But restaurants were.
Yeah, restaurants were. So we survived. But then you figure out the first 2 weeks how to live. You enjoy your other 2 weeks. But, I mean, it's still remote working. So you work most of your time. And then all of a sudden it's over. And you're like, man, that flew by. Yeah.
Yeah, my brother did the same thing. He went to Portugal for a month.
Yeah.
And just a different pace of life that you have there than you have in the Netherlands. It made him really relax quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had this balcony, this apartment, and the balcony that had a view over the ocean and the harbor in that particular city. So you just work from there. You know, you're in the sun. That on itself is really good. Yeah. You have the ocean, the air from the ocean. You have a beautiful view. Yeah. What else is left to say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, when I went to Barcelona, right around the corner was my beach. Like literally 100, 200, probably somewhere in between there was my beach. And I could have meetings there. I could sit and work there. I could, after work, go for a walk. In the mornings, work out there, because they had beautiful stuff there as well. It was just, want to do more. I think it's really cool that companies are like, one of our benefits, we don't pay the best salary, but you can work from anywhere. And I'm like, man, that's a huge plus. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't think if you're a startup, if you don't do that, you're definitely behind. Yeah. It's funny because one of the things I asked you, if we're talking about kind of our ideal situation anyway, is if you're working on something, if you're working on a real passion, what would that be for you? And you said decentralized systems. Yeah. I haven't heard that often. I think that might be the first one I heard that. But why is that a passion of yours?
So the why is, I guess, pretty big. I think I'm just in generally attracted to emergent behavior. I find this a very fascinating thing when you have very large multi-agent systems, where you have lots of moving components, that somehow all of this aggregate behavior kind of makes sense and also has, how do you say this? It has a certain complexity to it, but it also collectively is kind of efficient. And making that more efficient is what I think is really interesting. Yeah. So perhaps as a concrete example, so I find it very fascinating to have bee colonies or termite colonies, because you get this kind of stigmergic behavior from all of these individual little ants or termites that collectively accomplish a function, even though individually they're just very simple. Yeah. And
you think humans are the same thing?
Humans are definitely more complex. Yeah. But yeah, you also see stigmergic behavior in that collectively we accomplish a lot more than we could ever do on our own. Yeah.
We're like a more advanced beehive.
Yeah, we're a more advanced beehive.
Yeah. And the things we create are like cities. And I mean, even if you look at the internet and the things we've created on there or the communities we cultivate, it's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
If you see the kind of products that have come to fruition because of just people sitting together and say like, let's build this one thing, and then suddenly it exists. I find this quite magical.
Yeah.
That people can come together and build stuff. Like, for example, I've always been fascinated by Wikipedia, like both the creation, the hosting, and the maintaining of all of this data.
Yeah.
Making sure that it has a high level of consistency and truth to it. So they had some criticism at some point, like Wikipedia is unreliable compared to like this and this encyclopedia. It has this fault and that fault. But within a day, all of those faults were gone.
Yeah.
And in the encyclopedia, it would take another revision, which might take a few years to come about. So I find this very interesting.
Yeah. But Wikipedia, I mean, it's maintained by, I don't know exactly, but I'm assuming like a group of people, and the whole operation has a price tag as well. I don't know what the profit model is, but that's kind of the problem. Everything needs to have a profit model, and there needs to be a company behind it, either backing it or making a profit.
Yeah, that's correct. I find that is my biggest irk, I think, with our current infrastructure of the internet. It's really aimed at, like, it really facilitates well when companies that have a profit motive want to deliver a service that has some public utility.
Yeah.
For them, it's easy, but you need that business model. You need to get some money out of it somehow. And this is also indeed what got me into, well, part of what gets me into decentralization is I think we can do much better in terms of hosting.
Yeah.
So we see nowadays blockchain as a way of running applications and hosting some data. I mean, that's just the beginning, and I think we can take it much further than that. Having all of our, perhaps not all, but a lot of our public services don't need a public or don't need a business motive. They just are there. Like, we need electricity, we need water, we also need social networks, we also need to communicate and exchange information.
Yeah.
This shouldn't come with, well, your data is being hijacked, or you have to pay for the service. Like, there's certain basic primitives that should just be in place.
It's weird, right? Because, I mean, you said social services. I'm assuming you mean like social media stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, your data is a commodity, apparently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most of the time. And that's scary. We just accept it most of the time.
Yeah, because you want to use that service.
Yeah. And it's also not all necessarily bad, because we like to describe that as evil.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of utility that can come from such data, like having it somewhere. But then I'm like, why only that one party has this monopoly on this data when we could do much more with it?
Yeah.
Because that data on itself also has a public function. And that's just a missed opportunity. So if we can have this kind of infrastructure where this data is open to the extent that we want it to be open, and anybody could use this data for building a new service on top of it, that would be insane. That would be marvelous.
Yeah. The thing that scares me is that, I mean, I went through, I have a TikTok account now because I post like little snips of the podcast, which I think is cool. But then I go through their service terms, and it's like, man, they have a lot of data on me. They go through my phone, and they can even check file names, and they know, or at least it's very vaguely phrased that through my network, they can see what other devices I have, and they can check those files on those devices. So then I'm like,
that is scary.
That sounds really scary.
I've never gotten into TikTok, but this sounds scary.
Yeah, it does. And I don't know, the thing is, it's not transparent what they do with the data, right? Or why they would need it in the first place. They say to enhance some services and probably some advertising things. But I don't want to be socially engineered into buying things, because that is kind of their marketing thing. But that is their profit model. Without that, they would have no advertisements. And I think that's the biggest part of the business model. And through that, they can pay the content creators.
Yeah, and that's definitely space we're really only in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like exploring what is socially desirable. Because indeed, at some point, you can make commercials so effective that our brains are just not optimized for dealing with this kind of aggressive marketing campaign that really lures you into doing things that are just not rational or not desirable.
Yeah.
And there should be limits to that. And we don't know yet what those will be. But yeah, so part of indeed going to decentralization is it might provide the opportunity to have this conversation and to make sure that the software we run on top of the data is following certain laws. The laws that we collectively want in place because they're healthy for us. So yeah, that's a nutshell, I guess, for why decentralization.
I like it. It's a huge thing. But if you said, can you do a lot of stuff without Googling, without Wikipedia even, I'd be like, man, a lot of Google searches I do, Wikipedia is the first thing that pops up. So if that were to disappear, do I trust then the other services that are going to take its place? Yeah, that's kind of a scary thought. We rely on the infrastructure we've put into place, and we need that.
Yeah, same with Q&A websites. I mean, as developers, we use that all of the time.
Exactly.
Stack Overflow is a frequent source.
Yeah.
Should also never disappear, or I mean, never. Should at least there should always be a function like that to have Q&A.
Yeah.
To ask a question and get some answers, rate those answers, take into account the credibility of those who answer.
Yeah.
And then the archiving function, like you can find back that question and see all of the best answers. That's super useful.
Yeah.
And there's no particular reason, I think, not technically anyway, why that needs to be a service with commercials on top of it.
Yeah. What about the cost, though? Someone needs to pay that price tag at the end of the day, that bill that's monthly recurring.
Yeah, exactly. So decentralized data would help you there. It's not that the costs completely go away, of course.
Yeah.
But centrally hosting it makes that you have a lot of costs. If you have instead a model where you only share data that you are personally interested in, then you're already, how do you say this?
Would it cut down costs in that way?
Well, I mean, you're only consuming a small fragment of the internet, a very tiny fragment. And I mean, you're already getting that to your machine anyway, because you need to see it. So if all you do is then just also making sure that data continues to exist for other people who are interested in it, that's a relatively small cost.
Exactly.
And it's really distributed over everybody who participates in the network. So it doesn't make the cost entirely go away. It just puts it with the people that have already stake in that part of the internet anyway.
Yeah.
And it just makes it more efficient. And also in terms of storage, caching, like thinking in terms of systems that exist where your local machine is part of the system, as opposed to everything is kind of a back-end application and you have front-end shell in front of it. Just making your computer part of the whole thing makes that the data is locally available and you can compute in terms of that and visualize in terms of that. It just lowers the latency and immediately is also offline available. So I think there's a lot of future in developing with a local first mindset.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, when you said reducing costs, I was like, how are you going to do that? But indeed, if your stress on kind of the main machine is not there, it's decentralized and everyone's machine is doing their own kind of compute in that way. Also storage with regards to the data that you need. And you significantly reduce the amount of data that goes over the line and that you actually require to do, for example, a Q&A. We're just talking about text in that way. Shouldn't be that much. Then exactly, the cost will go down, probably drastically. The thing is, how do we get there? Because, man, everything is centralized right now. Blockchain is kind of this new thing, and there's a huge bubble and hype behind it with regards to currencies and the whole crypto market in and of its own. But the technology seems pretty good to have in place. We're just slowly trending towards that, I think.
You're right. Blockchain is one part of it. It's also a very particular part. I don't think it's necessarily the biggest component.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it's more about, I think two main problems are being able to host data, the ability to ensure that you have integrity of this data, that you can have a degree of autonomy, anonymity.
Yeah.
You can host a data also anonymous. But then beyond data, you also need to think about compute. So you want to probably run computations as well. So part of it might be just everything is local. You do all of your own computations, but that's also not necessarily efficient.
Yeah.
So you'll probably end up with, you want to have the data and have decentralized applications as well that return you data. And this data also needs to have integrity. And that's actually very tricky. And that's why what they try to solve, for example, with ledgers. But they're not entirely there yet, because that entails a lot of complexity and a lot of overhead. And we can optimize a lot there.
I can imagine. I mean, even if you're talking about the security behind it, right? If you're saying I'm running something's happening on my local machine, if someone somehow gets hold of that, either with regards to the data and they can see way more than they need to be, or they can run whatever they want on my machine, that sounds very scary.
So that's definitely a part. You don't want to just have a Trojan horse on your machine in the form of decentralized software. Yeah. But the other part of it is, do I trust your machine to run the computation and give me the same output as if I were running it locally?
Yeah.
If you say like, I computed this result, and really we did an election, and I've counted it, and this is the result. Do I trust your result?
Yeah.
That's a tricky one.
We don't have a choice right now. It's just like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Let's do a recount. Oh, something else popped out. Oh yeah, okay.
So the nice thing about public data is that everybody could run, of course, this recount if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And it's also the principle, I think, behind a lot of this, making this reliable in general.
Yeah.
But there are also some other techniques that are going way over my head, but they're using cryptography to, and a very limited set of operations like addition and multiplication to be able to run on unencrypted data.
Yeah.
Not understanding what this encrypted data is, nonetheless changing the data, and from the output still not understanding what the input is or the output, because also the output is encrypted. They don't understand what's happening, but they've calculated the actual output as if you were running it locally as well.
Interesting.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of building blocks we're looking for, I think.
Exactly.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot more, but that's one of those building blocks that's really important to go to the point where we can make commodity services on top of decentralized infrastructure.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about political stuff and in data that needs to have a certain amount of integrity, it's good that that's publicly available, right? And that you can do your own calculations if need be. So you build that trust, right? It's not that you don't trust it right now. It's that you have the option to go through it yourself and figure out if it's actually valid and truthful in that way. Because a lot of stuff we just have to take for face value, right? I can look up if I have a little mark on my leg. It can either be good, it can either be bad, it can either be a symptom of a disease, or I have no clue. It depends on my Google search. If I want it to be bad, it is going to be bad, which is a really weird thing. Yeah. One of the reasons I didn't have social media, I have more social media now, is because I never saw the value of it, right? I never saw, maybe you have social media. I never wanted to see the best version of you all the time online and engage with that person. I like talking to people, I like calling people a lot more. But now, and I've had this realization more recent, it's a way to engage with the community, right? And that we should never get rid of, because that is a very big part of what we've created now with the internet and the whole digitalization, is a way to engage with a certain community. It can be a book club, it can be talking about movies, it can be reviewing software, it can be anything. But the world, because of that, has become a lot smaller. If those things become commodities and available to everyone, I think that would be very beneficial to a lot of people that don't have it.
Yeah, I've the same, I think. So I have Facebook. I still have the account. I don't know why. I guess I was too lazy to log in and just completely cancel the account. Yeah. Because I'm not using that anymore either. Indeed, what you said, like I don't want to see only the Instagram pictures, like everybody posturing as though their life is perfect. And
exactly.
Like, I know you. We're all human. We all have our own struggles. Nothing is ever completely bright, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I relate to that. And what you said also, like, I think indeed that's the thing. It's about interest groups and people finding each other, being able to indeed get value out of their interaction. Like I also find this really cool is the crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to accomplish something, You go with a group of people together and you fund it. And I think that's also a big part of our future for software engineering as well, is where we are thinking in terms of let's develop a system in a decentralized fashion. We just write down problems as tickets, and then we're going to crowdfund until the someone is eager enough to pick up that ticket for that money. And of course, then there's lots of interesting problems to solve, like how to verify that the solution was in line of the requirements, and make sure that people don't go away with the money. Plenty of problems, but I think that's a very interesting future for software engineering as well.
Yeah,
crowdfunding for software development.
I've never thought of it that way. All crowdfunding things I've seen is a physical product at the end of the day. Sometimes a digital product, but never the act of creating things and adding value to an overarching system.
Yeah.
And that's a way of kind of decentralized funding, crowdfunding.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's really cool. For
yeah,
sure.
I think that will be awesome to have. I mean, we have so many software developers around the world, and if you can just dig into that pool of talent and have everybody make it open for involvement. People can get involved into the systems they would like to contribute to.
Yeah.
For me, I think that would be great if this would be more our way of working, that systems are open for contribution in general, and you can get paid for that as well. It doesn't only have to be your own voluntary time, because that's most of the open source world right now is all voluntary.
It's almost all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I don't know the percentage of like what's the most useful versus enterprise software, but it's a pretty big part of our world is open source software. So it deserves also to be rewarded appropriately. And that's if we can make it with a business model, make it more productive for everybody, because there is a big gap sometimes between open source software and enterprise software where just the quality is a little bit better.
Yeah.
There's a fewer bugs because the bugs are also picked up, because in open source nobody wants to pick them up.
Exactly.
And in enterprise they're forced to, or they're paid to.
Yeah.
So that provides an additional motivation for quality, and that's important.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why sometimes the quality is not there is because it's really cool that everyone can create an open source project, right? But that also comes with a downside. Everyone can create an open source project.
Yeah.
I sometimes look for solutions that I can build myself, but that I'm like, I just want a fast one. Let's see if there's an open source package. There's several, and then it's hard to pick from. And some are more established than others, and some have more bugs than others. But it becomes an integral part of your software.
Yeah, and like you said, like if you have 7 of those packages, why did those 7 people not work together to make one package that's better? For like that wouldn't have any of the bugs that. And I mean, that's not to blame any of those persons, because the infrastructure is just not, and I'm talking about the social infrastructure. Yeah. It's just not in place for us to do that effectively. Yeah. I think we could do better there.
I like that, because if we were to join forces, right, we already don't like reinventing the same thing or reinventing the wheel in this way. That's why we have packages of software that do exactly what we want, right? That's those open source contributions. But then why don't we centralize those open sources or make it one bigger system, one wheel that would solve this problem and does it better than all those things distributed?
Yeah. Yeah, although I have to say, like, there's a practical side to it as well. You say, like, we don't like to invent the wheel, but as soon as a new language comes out, we rebuild the whole internet with a new language. So
yeah. I mean, you have reinventing the wheel and kind of innovating in what you do, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's continuous, and I think we are improving. What I like seeing, and that's more of a thing I see in companies, and I think it's a thing I see in the people that buy things, is that we don't really buy a product. We buy sometimes into an idea, but we also care about what the company does behind it, right? A lot of companies are like, okay, if you buy whatever product we're selling, we'll plant a tree somewhere in where it needs to. And that's the thing they also do. And that kind of trends us less towards a capitalistic mindset, less towards actually earning all the money that we can make, but also giving back, right? And companies in software, they do that by contributing back to open source contributions. Is that contributing back to open source contributions? Making sure people can do their open source stuff if they want to actually fund open source projects that have a big stake in their enterprise software, right? It's a way to engage with the community and also a way to give back. And I like that we're focusing a lot more on giving back.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And I think it can be a model that works in certain industries. I've also seen, For example, Mapbox was a good example, I think here, is they had an open source map, really good JavaScript library. I think a lot of people enjoy working with this one, but then they kind of made it not free to use anymore.
Yeah.
And I think now part of the source are also closed.
Google Maps was the same thing. No, you could implement it, and all of a sudden there was going to be a huge fee.
Yeah, that's just no. And they told it, said like, everybody is having this awesome library, but we're not making money because of it. So we need to make it. We need to change the way we operate.
Yeah,
and that is also a realistic part of it. But yeah, as I said, if you could contribute, if you could pay the developers for doing what they want to do, then you would still have this incentive to develop this map project.
Yeah.
So, yeah, developing our social infrastructure, I think, is an important one here.
Yeah, I like the thought that commodities should be free, a lot of essential commodities, because exactly as you say, the map example is one thing, but even if I'm talking about giving a training on a piece of software, there's so many free videos on YouTube, yet there's so many paid courses which probably do somewhere exactly the same thing. I don't even know if the quality is higher or better because I've never paid for those courses, because on YouTube everything's free, or I can Google whatever I need, right? Yet those courses still exist. So somewhere, somehow, someone was like, okay, my content is this good, then I'm going to ask money for it. Or they're like, this is a business model and I can ask money for it.
Yeah, there will be people that come and pay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then there's the downside, right? Because that you always have that option. It's never going to be free. It's never going to have that commodity. You're always going to have variants of the same thing, which vary in quality. And then if you're sitting from the consumer side, you're like, man, let's say I want to start out being a software engineer. I come from a completely different background. If I Google one thing, I'm going to get so many results. I'm going to get so many biased opinions. I'm going to dive into this world and I'm going to have no clue where to start. I'm not saying one thing and one track is the best way, but it's just way too much information right now as it is.
Yeah. Actually, this touches upon something that scares me a little bit, in particular for education.
Yeah.
Because it's now so easy for anybody to just publish anything.
Yeah.
And that's a really good thing, I think, in general, that we can all make our voice heard. We can all express ourselves. I think that's really valuable. But when it comes to education, I mean, if I look back at school and university, like you could just literally have the best professors in the world on a particular subject, the best educator, record a number of videos, and why would you ever retake those videos?
Yeah.
Perhaps because times have changed, but not very often. You would have to, at some point, when do we still need teachers? Like, for personal counseling or so at the moment that you get into struggles, but for significantly less of the time, I think.
I agree.
And that's also a bit scary
for
our educational industry, that perhaps at some point we end up with just a whole school curriculum of the best videos of all the best educators, and we're done with education.
Yeah.
We just need a number of personal assistants to help you through some of the exercises sometimes.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder where that is going.
Yeah, I mean, already, if I talk to myself, and when I was in kind of, it's not kindergarten, it's elementary school. That's the thing I was looking for. But I was going a bit faster than the rest of the class, right? And what you do now is way different than what you did back then. Back then, I would play with clay and like do other stuff or read a book. And now you get like an advanced thing on a tablet, and you're like, okay, you can do advanced courses and you can already move ahead. My little brother does that. He's 10 years old right now, and he's way better at math, and he's doing the higher level math than he's supposed to because he can, and he has the option to, and he likes it. He likes being challenged mentally, right? You don't want to do the boring stuff and then be like, oh, you can do something else now. Sure, there's something else is fun, but yeah, it's cool that we have the option to do so.
For education, it's awesome.
Right? Yeah, and this would be, I mean, I'm talking about a lot of levels above that, but yeah, if you can get the best content from the best professors around, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, but the education system should be better because of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's also the scary thought about that in software engineering. Mm. The pool of software engineers that's available remote working is pretty big.
Yeah.
The level of competition, therefore, is also really, really high. And how many systems do you really need?
Yeah.
How many different e-commerce packages do you need? And how many different Wikipedias and Q&A websites do you need? At some point, especially if you start building public functions, and do it collectively, you just need one of them.
Exactly.
Um,
The best one.
the best one.
The best one's all we need. Yeah. Yet we're all trying to make that best one, which means we all have variants of the best one.
Yeah, true.
And there's no incentive for us to join forces and cooperate, which is quite sad.
Is that so?
I don't think there's an incentive behind it, right? A lot of thing is you need to make money, and you can get money from the people, but it doesn't mean that if you cooperate with the same amount of people, you're going to get more money because of it.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking really about different enterprises not wanting to cooperate in any way. Yeah, I understand.
Exactly. Competition makes sure there's more money
It's
in the
better
pool,
to,
right?
to have a little bit of a lock-in, get people in my system, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
that's
mean,
true.
also for the end consumer, right? If there's a centralized system and they're not building or they're not fixing your needs, are you going to complain to that one entity? That's kind of what we have in a political sense in a country. If there's competition, then people get better because of it, right? They're like, oh, the competition is doing that. We're going to innovate on this. Competition breeds innovation. And if you don't have that competition anymore, I don't know if it becomes better of it.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think that the way I look at it in the context of decentralization is the idea that you can have data and software completely open.
Yeah.
Means also that you can make your own variant of that software and tweak it to the extent that you need it to be changed.
Yeah.
So it would be less in terms of we need a complete new package, like we need a complete new bit of software just because we want to change this one thing.
Yeah.
Take the base package and change it for the one thing that you want to have changed. So I think change will be more granular because right now it's often indeed like it's an encompassing solution that an enterprise offers, and at some point, other businesses have caught up with that and offered a number of additional functions. And your own package is now too big and too slow, too sluggish to change, and therefore we all migrate to this new big thing which has these additional few functions.
Yeah.
But that's a massive migration step when we could really focus on, what's the core value of each of these things and make sure that that's well established and build on top of that little chunks.
Yeah. I really like that example because that, I mean, you and me are both consultants here at Xebia, but that to me feels like what's happening continuously, right?
Yeah.
An organization creates some amalgamation of software. They're like, oh, we're moving too slow versus our competition now. We have this big budget of doing it again, and we do it again. Or we try to do it again, it never works, and we go back to the old system and improve that one. But there's always this loop of kind of improving and becoming too slow, and then like software kind of sluggishly dying off in a way, and it never goes away. If we have commodities, if we have building blocks, and that's really the core of our system, and that's free to everyone, and we can innovate on top of that, you get kind of the best of both worlds, right? You don't have this centralized system which you're trying to decentralize and no one has any input. You have these commodities, and data could be one of them. Hopefully infrastructure is also one of them, so that it's just available for you to distribute it to the community. And you can innovate through that, right? You already have those building blocks, don't need to reinvent those, and then fix actual consumer problems or customer problems or add to the world, just be beneficial somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so idealistic that I think we'll go to some place where we have exactly one of every function.
Yeah.
Of course, there will be multiple instances and a little bit of competition, but it might be, I think it could be a little bit more granular,
Yeah.
a bit more fine-grained, what we're trying to build from scratch every time. Because indeed, like, we see that a lot of clients that they build a whole suite of things to help the developers. Like you have platform teams that invent that solve problems that have been solved in every company over and over, and then build packages on top of each other that do the same thing in essence. So sometimes it seems a bit wasteful, and I mean there's also value in re-exploring those areas. That's not necessarily bad, but we seem to be doing it a bit too much.
Yeah, way too much. Yeah. And at some point, like from a personal development point of view, I like doing new things, right?
Yeah,
but then
exactly. I love novelty.
I love novelty, right? That's what keeps us going, kind of moving towards the unknown, picking up unknown things, making stuff happen, right? It's very, very tangible at the end of the day. But if I've done that once, twice, definitely a third time, I'm like, man, I've done this. Someone else should do this.
Now you're an expert.
Yeah.
Now you're asked for this.
Now you're the guy. Yeah, exactly. You've become a problem that you have to solve. And the only way of solving it is like, I don't want to do this anymore, which is sad, right? If you If we're talking about a guy that fixes my dryer or my washing machine, they're never going to be like, oh, let me Google how I do this because I've done this like 10 years ago. I've done this for the last 10 years, but I always have to Google how I do this. I do have to do that sometimes while I'm creating software.
No.
Yeah, everyone Googles stuff. If I'm writing a shell script, I have to Google my stuff again.
Oh, Bash is terrible for that. I just do it just not enough to be able to just write it off out of my head.
Exactly. But if we're going back to the mechanic, they will do that thing. They're specialists in that thing. They take pride in probably doing that thing. For software engineers, I also take pride in the skills that I have, but my skills are not my output, right? And if I'd have to do the same output, if I have to build the same systems in the output that I'm doing, I'm not going to be happy, because those same mental steps that I might be doing, I want to apply them to other things as well. I want to have different output. I want to add value in different ways. And it's
Can
a
you
different
elaborate
thing.
on that? What do you mean by output in different ways?
So if I'm building an e-commerce website, it's always going to be an e-commerce website.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a different domain. Maybe domain is a better word. I want to explore different domains.
Yeah.
I've done domains in information systems, in healthcare and stuff like that. That's vastly different from an e-commerce website.
Yeah.
Nothing against an e-commerce website. I like doing it. It's a cool thing. I've grown up in retail, which with regards to my professional career. But yeah, at some point you're like a retail and e-commerce. You've seen that. You want to explore different things. And I don't think people that do stuff physically, if we're talking about a mechanic, for example, they don't have that. That's their domain. And they're happy with that. They become expert in that domain. And I don't really feel like I need to move on.
I don't know.
Yeah, because you're not a mechanic.
I'm not a mechanic. So what I do know is that actually we've asked someone to check up on our boiler.
Yeah.
And this guy also Googled our particular boiler to
Yeah.
find the instructions, like how does this particular version work? So even if they know boilers in general, they still look up things as well. They don't know every boiler by head, of course. So, and does it make you happy? I don't know.
Yeah. I
don't know.
I think it's fair. I mean, absolutely in software engineering, I think it's fair in the world that you're like, I don't know this. Let me find out. Right? That's the skill that you need. Doesn't matter if it's something physical or...
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest skill.
Yeah. The thing is, if it's physical, it's less common, I feel like, because you've done this or you've seen this. There's not many variants of the same thing, right? A boiler doesn't upgrade daily, and software releases probably sometimes daily.
Yeah, that's true.
Is a big difference in the end. Cool, man. I'm gonna round it off here. There's a lot of stuff to think about with regards to decentralization. I didn't know it was this big of a rabbit hole. I always thought it would be, but man, if we have a lot of commodities in place, I think it will be really cool to build on top of that.
I would love that.
Yeah, right. And just hopefully being paid in some way for that.
Yeah, ideally, yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Time is the biggest currency we have.
Remote, of course.
Remote. Tying it all back together. I mean, time is the biggest currency we have, right? And you want to spend it adding value somewhere.
Absolutely.
Cool. Merlijn Boogerd, everyone. I'm going to get this camera. I'm going to put all his socials in the description below. And with that being said, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.